Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang, currently sheltering in place in San Francisco. Stocks rally on the back of oil production numbers. Exxon and Chevron leading the rally today after President Trump said that Russia and Saudi Arabia would both cut production, this sending energy shares higher. We are standing by for the daily White House briefing to begin. We are hearing that Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin will be there. This as 1 million cases of the coronavirus now clocked around the world. And of course, yesterday, we know that deaths soared in the United States past 1,000. 1,000 Americans in the United States died in the United States as of yesterday. We're going to continue to cover this rally, talking about these energy shares as they have gone up. And again, we're going to take you to that White House briefing momentarily. Meantime, I want to bring in our Romain Bostic, the co-host of What'd You Miss? Okay, the Providence St. Joseph tape? Hang on, we're just having some technical difficulties. Earlier today, I did speak to the CEO of Providence St. Joseph. This is the third largest healthcare network in the country by revenue. They've got more than 50 hospitals across the country, more than 1,000 clinics, and 120,000 healthcare workers fighting this virus. Now, their hospitals aren't located in New York, but they are located in Washington and in California, some of the early epicenters of the disease. So I sat down with Rod Hochman, the CEO of Providence St. Joseph, to talk a little bit more about what they're doing and what they're seeing in their hospitals. Take a listen.
We started with our first index case. Now it was 2 months ago, January 21st. The minute we had that first case, we started getting ready. And we started knowing what was coming and really getting organized. So what we knew is that if you can keep the rate of rise of cases, particularly coming into the hospital, you can get in front of this, be able to treat patients well. And so far, that's what we've seen on the West Coast. So we really got our systems ready. So we haven't seen these massive overloads. We've seen a steady progression. And for over at least the last 5 days, we've seen the same number of cases on a day-to-day basis, and we're hoping we're starting to see a decrease.
Now, you have a model predicting 80,000 to 100,000 deaths in the United States, which is actually less than the model that the president is now looking at, 100 to 200,000 deaths. How are you coming to those numbers, and why the discrepancy?
All of these models are a little bit different. The models get better as you put more data into them. So, it gets more intelligent once you start to see what actually is happening. The models that we're looking at are predictive if everyone did what we're doing on the West Coast of really practicing social distancing, and it assumes that you're doing all the things right. So that could vary. I think the question to ask is, we'll know more within the next week or two which way it's going to be, either on the lower end or on the upper end. But the key is for everyone to kind of stay in place, do all the things that we're talking about. And we're hoping that we're right, that it's going to be on the lower end and not on the upper end.
That's the thing, though. Not everyone is going to do everything right. Florida only just issued a shelter-in-place order. Some models aren't predicting infections peaking until August. So how long do you expect that we're going to have to be under quarantine? How long till life returns to normal, if it ever returns to normal?
Right. Well, what'll happen is, I think this will happen in waves. So there'll be parts of the country that get through the wave and then start to improve. There are others that are going to be later. And there's actually some predictive modeling, depending on where you live, where that wave will be. The tricky thing is once the wave subsides, so let's say in Seattle, it starts to subside, we start to see less cases, then there's also an art to how do you turn things back on? Well, you don't just flip a switch and start going back to business as usual. You turn the switch slowly. You start to bring some things back online, but at the same time, you do a lot of testing. And that's what we learned from Korea. So as they turned things on, they started really testing and making sure the disease wasn't starting to spread again. And that's what we're going to have to do as we turn things on. So as we do that across the United States, it's not going to be the whole country at the same time. It'll be parts of the country, different places. But the turn on also has to be done really, really carefully. And we can't just all of a sudden say, okay, let's go out and party and get everyone together. You start to ease up slowly, but at the same time, you do a lot of surveillance.
Speaking about China, I know you've been talking to medical professionals there to help you learn how to best respond here. Bloomberg has reported that U.S. intelligence has said that China has massively underreported their numbers. What is your assessment of the real situation in China?
So we're not getting into as much of the numbers and all of the politics of it. We're really talking about the science. And that's really been helpful to us in terms of how do we manage someone in the ICU? What are kind of the things that they learned about getting people off ventilators? Like one of the things they told us, don't wait to intubate a patient. If you think they're going downhill, get them on a ventilator sooner than later. You're going to save their life if they do that. So there've been a lot of practical things that they've been teaching us that our clinicians have been putting into play right away.
You can catch that full interview at Bloomberg.com. Rod Hochman there, the CEO of Providence St. Joseph. Coming up, we're going to talk to the CEO of Verizon. Just how well will mobile networks stand up with all of this pressure on them? Also, we will take you to that daily briefing at the White House. President Trump scheduled to start speaking there any moment now. We are also hearing that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin will be there as well. We will take you there as soon as it begins. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. With millions of people working from home around the world, the question remains, how well will our mobile networks hold up? Joining us now, someone to answer that question, I want to bring in our Bloomberg anchor, David Weston, who has a very special guest. David?
Thank you so much, Emily. Yes, we're joined by Hans Vestberg. He is, of course, the CEO of Verizon Communications. So, Hans, welcome back. It's great to have you here. You got a shout out, and by you, I mean Verizon and you personally, from President Trump yesterday at his briefing, saying how great your network and other networks, in fairness, in the United States are holding up. Is he right? How are you faring?
Hey, I think in this crisis, which is an enormously serious situation we have around the globe and here in the U.S., the networks becomes extremely important infrastructure. And I can tell you that we have an enormous growth in the network. We have 800 million calls a day, which is a double amount Mother's Day, which is the biggest day a year of calls. 9 billion messages, which is equally much as New Year's Eve. So enormous lot of growth in the network. At the same time, we see 100% growth of gaming in the network, 50% up on VPN, people working from home. But the network holds up very well. We have built a robust network over years. We're investing a lot of money in our network. So I feel good about our wireless network, our IP network, and fiber network, and our broadband network. They are all holding up well, but they are used a lot these days, and they're so important to keep this country and many countries up running for the ones that need to have communication.
So it's good to know that you're holding up well. Give us a sense of the curve, though. You've taken a big step up. Is it holding flat at that level, or does it continue to grow, and at what rate?
So week over week right now, we see fairly small incrementals. I mean, the VPN, which is one measurement, how much people are working from home, it's growing 2 to 3% over week. That means that many people already the week before moved home here in the U.S. Gaming is up 1 or 2%. We doubled in the beginning from the baseline. So we see a little bit of flattening. It's not exponential. I think that many people are actually have changed the patterns. And I will give you another metric, which is mobile handoffs. The mobile handoffs is when you move from one radio cell to another. They are down 29% in the U.S., meaning people are moving 29% less. But you can look like a city like New York Metro, where it's down 53% from 1 week earlier, how people are moving less in the network. So we see dramatic shift in behaviors and how they're using the networks and how they're moving around in the United States at the moment.
It's fascinating, Hans. I hadn't thought of that, but that's one indication of social distancing, that in fact people are not moving around, they're
Absolutely.
staying put, we hope, in their homes. Where's the biggest weak point in this point? Where are you worried about that actually you could put too much stress on the network?
Right now, Evan, so far so good. I think we are prepared. We actually increased our capex guidance for the year for 2 weeks ago. We did it for two reasons. One, we want to be prepared if we need to see some weaknesses, which we don't see. But we also thought it was a good action for a responsible company to actually invest more in these times and secure and reassure jobs for many people that are deploying our networks across the globe and here in the U.S.
I was wondering about that, whether you were going to have to increase capital investment and really invest more in equipment. Are you finding it available insofar as you want to make that investment and increase your capacity to stay ahead of this? Are you finding that equipment readily available?
Yes, we do. The supply chain or infrastructure is pretty intact. There are some small glitches here and there, but that's nothing unusual. So far, I would say that has worked well. Of course, I foresee some more complications here in communities and states in the U.S. where there are quarantines, etc., where it's harder to get permits and rolling out networks. But from an infrastructure point of view, it's of course you still have access to equipment. And then on top of that, of course, our field force is basically today doing the majority of the work is critical work to maintain the network, seeing that first responders, hospitals have the needed capacity, or global corporations that actually need to operate in these times.
So, Hans, you've seen a big step up in traffic. What about in new customer acquisition? I believe something like 70% of your retail stores have been shut down now. As a practical matter, are you really seeing that trail off?
I think that in general, I think we have more than 70% of our stores closed, and the ones that are open are mainly or only by appointment and critical things you need to do. Your equipment is not working. You need to fix your Wi-Fi, etc., which small and medium businesses and consumers need. So of course you see less of that in these times, and people are of course keeping their service up. That's the most important right now, so they can communicate with friends, family, and of course working.
Are you seeing any difficulty in your customers actually being able to pay their bills? Because we saw yet again today huge jobless claims step up. A lot of people out of work here. Are you seeing people who are either late paying or coming to you and asking for concessions, whether small businesses or individuals?
So we have already now signed and agreed to what we call Keep America Connected, which is basically a pledge to not terminate services for any residential or small and business customers because of inability to pay. So we are keeping them whole because we think that it's so important for this country that these small and medium business and residentials actually are connected. So that's how we have gone out to our customers. We have also, for all wireless customers that doesn't have unlimited, we have increased all the data for them with 15 gig data per month automatically. So we're doing everything to see that our customer can continue and support them in these difficult times.
We're really in the middle of this crisis right now. It may be too early to talk about what happens next, but I'm sure you're thinking about that. Is this changing your view on the future of Verizon and where you will invest and where you have real growth opportunities? Do you expect that people will, to some extent, stay with some of the work at home, stay with some of the increased use of your services, even after this crisis has passed?
You're right. I mean, you need to work with the crisis management and secure the safety of your employees firstly, and then see the networks are up. But at the same time, you also need to think about the future and seeing that you're getting strong out of this and continue as a strong corporation for all your stakeholders. So I think that the strategy of Verizon is not changing. But I think that the behaviors in the market will change, which might be different products that we have and applications. That's for sure. This is such a big impact on our whole society, and people will revisit and corporations will revisit how they work, how they act. And that, of course, will change also how they will interact with technology, because technology becomes even more important going forward. So, yes, we think about it, but it's too early to make any conclusions. But I'm certain When we come back to something called normal, it's going to be a new normal.
Okay, thank you so very much, Hans. It's really always great to talk to you. That's Hans Vestberg. He is the CEO of Verizon Communications. Emily?
David, thanks so much for that. All right, now we're going to talk to a CEO who just informed his employees that he has tested positive for COVID-19. I want to bring in Glenn Fogel, the CEO of Booking.com. Glenn, you've already had a lot to deal with given what's going on with the travel business, so I appreciate you joining us under the circumstances. First question, how are you doing?
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm very, very pleased to be able to say that I am physically fine. I've been symptom-free for many days now, so physically I am absolutely fine. Emotionally, it's hard because I feel so fortunate, so lucky that I'm over it and not a problem now. But I know so many people have not had the same course and have actually had a much harder time with this virus. And I feel so sad for all of them. And I know a lot of people who are very scared about catching it. And I know not everyone's going to come out with such mild symptoms like I did and resolve it so quickly. So it's a mixture of thankfulness, glad I was lucky, but I recognize so many people have not been.
Meantime, you've got a lot of work to do. Obviously, there have been an unprecedented number of cancellations, and I'm glad that you are feeling better right now so that you can start to deal with all of this. But give us sort of the picture of your business right now and what you're seeing in the global travel industry. I mean, surely it's come to almost a standstill in many places, though other places are still business as usual.
Well, there are not too many places I'd say that are business as usual. Certainly there is some parts of the world where there is some travel happening, primarily domestic. But I will definitely say that we have been dealing with a lot of customers who, because either they can't go where they wanted to go or have been prevented by governments or whatever. So we've been dealing with just a huge, huge amount of customer inquiries, 400,000 contacts a day at Booking.com that we've had to deal with. And I just can't thank our employees, our customer service people, being able to handle this, are handling it. It's a hard thing, but we're getting it through.
What regions, what parts of the business are the worst for you, or perhaps in the most trouble at this point?
Well, I think you've seen, it really reflects what you're seeing in the newspapers or on your news show, where people are saying that Western Europe right now, big problem. Italy, we all know what was happening there. It's horrible. Spain. In the U.S., New York, where I am located, Scarsdale, New York, where I live, it's really a problem right now. Clearly, it's something that's rolling around. Some places are accelerating. Some places seem to have peaked, and a couple places in Asia seem to be past peak. And we hear about China, where there's been a slight resurgence in economic activity and travel slowly beginning to come up a little bit for domestic travel there. But overall, we just all have to accept that travel entered this problem first, and they're probably going to be the last ones to leave it because there's still going to be a lot of hesitant for people who want to travel, who are going to get on it. I know that this is something that nobody likes to hear, but I fear that it's going to take some time for travel to come back.
How much time? We're talking about the peak for infections potentially in August. That might be in the U.S., but it could be elsewhere around the world. Then there's the potential for the resurgence of the virus in various places that have already faced it. So how long is it going to take for the travel industry to rebound?
Well, I think that is the $64,000 question. And I do believe that there's going to be hesitant for many governments around the world to want to risk reimportation of the virus. If they've done a good job of stomping it down, they're not going to want to let people come back in and start it up again. So there's going to be a lot of restrictions, I think, for some time, preventing people from traveling freely, and that's going to help, unfortunately, dampen down the recovery in international travel. Domestic will come back a little bit faster, a little bit better, but still, overall, people are going to be concerned about getting on a plane or going anywhere because of concern about getting ill. What we really need are two things. We need a vaccine, of course, and that will just make it so much better for everybody. I know we all are hoping so much for that. The second thing, though, we absolutely need, and that's going to be governmental assistance. And it's happening somewhat. We saw those first steps. We saw the U.S. government step up and put in $2.2 trillion. We're seeing governments around the world begin to put in money. But I just want to make this clear, too. It's not going to be enough for the long run. We're going to need more.
President Trump there talking about new measures to encourage private companies to make necessary protective medical equipment, including ventilators, companies like GM. And earlier we heard Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin unveiling the new guidelines for this small business loan, $350 billion in small business loans that will be guaranteed by the federal government, who can apply, independent contractors, sole proprietors, and just how this will work. We're going to continue listening in to this press conference. Go to Live Girl Go on your Bloomberg terminal if you want to continue listening. We'll be right back with more Bloomberg Television after this quick break.